Yidden live in Eretz Yisrael, and Eretz Yisrael is being built more and more each day. And yet, we still consider this a situation of Galus. That seems contradictory. Yidden on one hand are living in Eretz Yisrael, and on the other hand, it's still Galus. How does that work? So it's obvious that the geographic Galus is not the full extent of Galus. The fact that Yidden were sent out of Eretz Yisrael is not the full extent of what Galus represents. Galus is really a spiritual Galus. It's something much, much deeper. And an example which is given to explain the spiritual exile which exists is similar to a dream. In a dream, everything, all the details and all the reality that we know of stays the same. Everything in the world that we know of stays the same. All the objects are there, just like when we were awake. The only difference is that there becomes a mix-up of where all the objects and where all of the subjects and all of the importance belongs. That's where the mix-up begins. And we see this clearly when it comes to Galus. We see that Yidden on one hand should be considered Banim Atam L'Hashem Elokeichem. Like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel, Mishnah Yudalid, that Chavivim Yisrael Shenikru Banim Lamakim. Yidden are Chaviv, we are beloved, that we are considered, we are called the children of Hashem. And in Parshas Bahar, Perek Chofhei, Pasuk Membeis, it says, Avodaim, Hashem considers us His Avodim, His servants. And we know that it says in Tanchuma, Parshas Tzav, Yud Gimel, that Eved Melech Melech, that the servant of a king, even if he'll be considered not as a son, but he'll be considered as an Eved, but he's an Eved of a Melech, and an Eved of a Melech is a Melech. And in Shavuos Daf Mem Zayin, it says that it's not just Eved Melech Kimelech, it says Eved Melech Melech. So the Yidden have tremendous importance, whether you consider them Banim, whether you consider Yidden Avodim, that they are Avodim of Hashem, and they are Avdei Melech Melech. Eved of a Melech is a Melech. So then, Yidden should be very important in the world. And yet, we see that there's a whole mix-up, that Yidden don't look like the more important ones in the world. The Yidden look like they are being subjugated by the Goyim. The Yidden are being subjugated by the Galus, and they don't show, and it's not seen, the importance that Yidden have in the world. And this is the deeper angle and the deeper meaning of Galus, that it's like a dream. Yidden are there. The whole world is there. It's just what's more important. Is everything in its place where it naturally belongs, where it's supposed to be, or not? And this concept of Galus is brought out in other ways as well. The fact that Yidden are not in Eretz Yisrael geographically is only one detail. But the fact that other nations are living in Eretz Yisrael and ruling over Eretz Yisrael to some extent shows that there's a mix-up of where people belong, of where things are supposed to be. And the same thing is what it says in the Gemara in Megillah Daf Chavtes, that Kol Mokim Shagalu Shechina Imoim. That when Yidden are in Galus, the Shechina is in Galus. What does this mean, that the Shechina is in Galus? What this means is that we know that everything in this world is created by Hashem and is kept in existence by Hashem. And nonetheless, when we look around the world, it's not visible that the world was created by Hashem. We know it as a fact, but it's not visible to us. It's something that the person would have to think into it and contemplate, and then they could come to that realization. So Shechina's in Galus because it's not clear. It's not clear to the eye that everything was created by Hashem. It looks like there's a mix-up of what's more important, where does everything come from, and who's in charge. And the same thing is in regard with the Galus of the Neshama. We know that all of our life sustenance comes from the Neshama, and yet, what guides our life? Where do we put the focus on? Do we necessarily put the focus on our Neshama? The answer is that not necessarily. A lot of the time we find that our body, that our materialistic life is guiding our actions and our focus. And this is the way it is in Galus. That in reality, Hashem, the Shechina, the Neshama is what should be guiding us. Eretz Yisrael is where we belong. And instead, there's a whole mix-up of who's in charge, of who's on top. And it seems like the Gashmias, the materialistic life, seems to be ruling and guiding the outcome of things. And this is what we daven for. When we daven that Moshiach should come, we daven we should have the Geula. We daven v'sachazena eineinu b'shuv chol tzion berachamim. We're davening that we should wake up from this dream. We should wake up from this Galus, and we should be spiritually awake, where it will be visible in the time of the Geula that everything truly comes only from Hashem. And our neshama will guide all our actions. We will be living in the right place, and it will be visible that Yidden are bonim LaHashem, Yidden are avdei Hashem, Yidden are connected and totally part of Hashem, and therefore there won't be a concept of Galus where Yidden are being subjugated. On the contrary, everything will be there, everything in the world will be there to serve Yidden and help them serve Hashem better.